once heard somebody say that only a fool learns from his own mistakes. The wise man learns from the mistakes of others. And I certainly found it to be true that crowdsourcing information, making friends with other lawyers of every stripe that run law firms of very different varieties, is the best way for me to figure out how to not fail in launching and running my own law firm. It's the friendships that I've made with these lawyers, the content that I've taken in, particularly a lot of podcast content that has helped me over the course of the last 5-6 years have some idea of what it takes to launch a law firm and to run it successfully. As I said before, I am setting records at making mistakes every day. And certainly what I don't know is much greater than what I do know. But over the course of the last couple of years, because I've aggregated and experimented with some of this information, while I'm not an expert on any of the subjects that we're going to cover through this content, I have, through the benefit of making friends with wise people and taking in this content, I've learned a little bit about what it takes to jump out of that big law firm practice and start your own firm. I want to make the point at the outset, though, that this entire series of content, it's strategic. It's about issue spotting. It is not at a tactical level. Like, it's the tip of the iceberg. So for every point that is made, there are dozens of key points behind every idea. So, hopefully, these videos, which, is what I had hoped to find that didn't exist, 5, 6, 7 years ago when I first began my journey towards leaving the employ of others and starting my own firm and working for myself. Like, hopefully this will be of some value to you. It's certainly what I would have wanted several years ago when I was staring over the precipice. You may find that this information gets dated very fast. I'm recording in 2023. And if I think back just a few years ago to the podcast that I could not stop listening to, upon re-listening over the last couple of weeks, I'm shocked at how fast the content in the podcast that I loved became dated. So, if you're listening to this in a number of years from now, you might want to be particularly careful to make sure that you're looking in the right places and you're making the right friends so that you can, learn from the mistakes of others. This content could get dated quite fast. And I think it's also worth noting that, not every lawyer in every law practice is going to really be benefited, I think, from what I'm going to talk about, because 98% of it is aimed at business to business law practice, right? It's lawyers that sell to institutional consumers of legal services, whether they're general counsels of large companies or real estate developers. In the case of my clients, it's not B2C, it's not business to consumer. I'm not looking for the consumer clients. It's not the people who walk down the street who are likely to be my clients. It's more of selling to businesses. And so you want to be careful as you learn from the mistakes of others to look at the right kind of content, to understand how deep the hole goes. Again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And then to make sure that what you're hearing is coming from the mouth of somebody who has a practice similar to yours. That's not to say that the business to consumer law firms and the lawyers who run them don't have important information to share with you if you are thinking of leaping out of a big law practice to start your own firm. Nothing could be further from the truth. I was absolutely astounded at maybe the one greatest revelation in the time since I left my old law practice was the enormous amount of brilliant content that is out there that is created by people who own and run smaller law firms. I really didn't know a whole lot about those kinds of lawyers and those kinds of firms, because for the first 18 years of my practice, it was just working for these enormous law firm with hundreds and hundreds of lawyers. But the people who own small law firms, or at least the ones that I've been fortunate enough to associate myself with, they're absolutely brilliant. They're on the cutting edge. They're, nimble in ways that go beyond just the cliche of the smaller law firm can act, more nimbly. And while I can't take everything that I learned from them and directly apply it to my practice, because many of them are, business to consumers, they're selling to different kinds of clients. So much of what I've learned and so much of what I've been able to take in to learn from the mistakes of others, and to try to get my arms around, what are all the issues that I need to be thinking about? And then once I've identified them, how can I get some depth of knowledge around it? It's not people who worked in large law firms that are creating this content. It's the brilliant people that own some of these smaller law firms. It's ironic because you probably don't know that these people exist, or, if you know that they exist, they're certainly not a part of your day-to-day world, which, was my loss, that I went so long in my career before I made some of these friends at some of the most forward-thinking smaller law firms. And they tend to be very different, right? A small law firm tends to be very vertical structure. Maybe there's just a handful of partners, and then the organization is really designed to kind of help them serve their clients. Contrast that to your practice, which, if it was anything like mine, you got a couple of hundred associates, a couple of hundred partners, and it's a very horizontal structure, right? You got associates, junior partners, senior partners, and a small bit of management. So, when you take in this content from all the people out there that have something to teach you about, and I think that a lot of the people who have things to teach you might be different people than you realize, you do have to sort of assess the perspective that you're hearing them come at you from, and to tweak it ever so slightly. I take in tons and tons of content from the web. I still am an avid listener of podcasts that relate to starting law firms and managing law firms. So much of it comes from people, brilliant people whose practices are very different than mine, was a few years ago and is today, but it's all worthwhile for me. It's just information that you have to filter in the right way to make sure that you're able to make, the best use of it. Whether it is, a traditional, B2C smaller law firm practice, or, a practice that was more like mine, B2B, a little bit of a bigger firm model, neither one of them is better. It's like freshwater fish and saltwater fish. Neither's better, but you need to know which one of them you are. So as you begin down this journey, if you're somebody that's interested in what I'm saying, but your practice is different than mine, which is a business to business practice where I'm selling to real estate developers, institutional owners of property, and, architects and engineers, people in the construction law space that are repeat consumers of legal services. If your practice is more, B2C, business to consumer, I'm not saying that what I'm going to talk about is of no value to you, but just like I filter and I apply the many brilliant things that I hear from my friends who run smaller law firms and have practices different than mine, you may also need to filter what I'm going to talk about so that it is more applicable for your exact situation and your exact law practice.